Commander Worf lectures Julian and Miles about Davy Crockett. General Martok spent 5 years as a civilian laborer aboard General Shivang's flagship. And Blood Wine still makes Esri Dax gag. She much prefers Moscow mules. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We have an extremely special guest today. You know him as General Martok. We know him as, well, General Martok, because he won't have it any other way. It's JG HERTZLER.
Yes.
Kapla!
This is the only way you'll ever get to see me again. Since I will never be joining you in Vegas.
Oh,
We'll
man.
see about that. We'll see about that. My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 7, Once More Unto the Breach, written by legendary sci-fi writer Ronald D. Moore, directed by Alan Craker. This was November 11th, 1998. Where were you? How you guys doing?
11/11. Wow.
Yeah.
11/11. I'm
Lucky
thinking the
day.
same thing, 11/11.
Yeah, and you're in a casino. Yo, 11. Winner.
Good sign.
Exactly. I like the outfit. As usual, you've got more style than the average person on full display.
Wow.
It's the man in my chest. Yeah, baby. Those are the
Everybody listening in on the audio podcast, JG has on a sleeveless to show off the guns, Suns Out, Guns Out Spock shirt, and it looks glorious.
Ain't the gun show it once was, man. I tell you, as after 3 years of sitting, waiting for the epidemic to be over, the pandemic, doing nothing because everything was closed, and I used to worship my own guns. Now I look at them and cry. Will I cry just a little because I had to go away?
Now you got the nice straw Crocodile Dundee straw hat, ready to go.
Well, it's not the Mr. Croc Dundee, although I adored him. And people who they may not know, the youngsters may not know Crocodile Dundee, and all they have is
Paul Hogan.
Paul
Hogan, I think, played him, right?
Oh no, wasn't it Crocodile
No.
Dundee played by the Aussie actor? You call that a knife? That's not a knife. His hand's a knife.
I thought that was Paul Hogan. The character's name was Mick.
Oh, Paul Hogan.
Yeah.
Was it Paul Hogan?
I was thinking of Hulk Hogan. I believe it was Paul Hogan.
Hulk Hogan would be a great crocodile Dundee or a croc hunter.
In fact, my guns used to be so big. I was sitting in a restaurant in Montrose. You know where Montrose is there above Glendale a little bit? Anyway,
okay.
Sitting there in the outdoor cafe, and the people would come up and say, "Wait a minute, are you Hulk Hogan?" Because I had this mustache coming down, and a skull cap, and it's like anyway, those were the days. Now it's like, are you Walter Brennan?
Well, you know something, brother, is how you would respond.
Yeah, you could do a mean Hulk Hogan, especially with that facial hair that you've got going.
Oh, wow.
You can pull it off.
I would not be able to survive one toss across the onto a body slammed by anybody.
But your opponent would also not be able to survive one slam from General Martok.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, well, the General Martok he'd have to have some major uppers to pick anybody up. If it was anybody Esri Dax, anybody larger than that would be a problem.
Esri, though, she can get it, though. Everybody else.
Oh, she can bring it. You're right. You're right. Come to think of it.
As I'm watching this episode, this is actually, we haven't really gotten to the episode, but this particular episode is my favorite Klingon episode that I've watched so far on the series. And we've had some good one, Way of the Warrior, and all of these other episodes. Yeah. But I enjoyed this one the most. And I think that this is the perfect embodiment of a Klingon episode, telling about the Klingon culture, about the nuances in between interactions between other Klingons.
I was reading in the, I think it was in the companion that Terry Erdman wrote most of the additional dialogue and whatnot in the companion, all the stories of each episode. Terry Erdman is a wonderful writer, and he wrote about it. That he told the story that Ron Moore, who is got to be one of my 5 best writers in anything in the world. He's an incredible mind, great mind, and to have that with being such a wonderful person as well. Like I have the guns and the mind, but I'm not a good person. Just anybody out there.
That's what you try to pretend. That's what you try to project. But
we know better. Yeah,
you're a nice guy. We all love you.
But he wrote that Ron Moore really wanted to write, when he was given the assignment, he really wanted to write this enormous mythical Klingon story that involved so much more than just Kor getting on that ship. It was as if it was the pilot episode of a Klingon saga that would go on for 2 years. That's how. And when he turned in his, as he said, he turned in his story outline. Ira said, "This is an encyclopedia. This is a book. This is like a 6-part book." He says, "Yeah, I know. Let's do that." He said, "No, we can't do that." And the major reason they felt it would be tough to do at that point was that it was late in the season, and everybody on the set was exhausted, and for the crew to be able to adjust from set to set to set to studio to studio to studio, it was just asking too much. I mean, these guys, they worked 5 hours before we'd get there, and they'd be there 5 hours after we left. So they didn't do it, but he did. He pared it down to what I think is it's my favorite episode in the that I ever did.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow! So then you have the same kind of feelings for that episode that I do, because when as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, have I seen a better Klingon episode than this? And I don't think so. I think this is the best Klingon episode. I think you show a lot of different sides of what we expect out of the Klingon personality, the really toughness, but the respect, just the different ways that you play it, the ribbing that you do. I really love your performance in this episode, JG. I thought actually in line with me being this, it being my favorite Klingon episode, I realized as well, and this, some people may be upset about it, but you're actually my favorite Klingon in Star Trek.
Funny, mine too.
What a coincidence.
So we agree on that.
We are in total agreement on that. Yeah. Actually, no, there's one more Klingon that I think, if I could aspire, and that's Richard Hatch. Richard Hatch as Karn in Axanar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, okay. Well, it was a fan film, quote unquote, but Richard Hatch is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I said Karn was extraordinary, but yeah, because besides me, what do you have? You have Galrod, please, and.
No, you have. I mean,
hey, wait a second.
No, we love O'Reilly.
Yeah,
you have Worf. Obviously, Worf is the most famous of Klingons, but the thing about Worf is that I get more of him being a human.
Yeah,
or like a humanist, like more human characteristic and traits than Klingon. I feel like he's trying to fit in and give up some of his Klingon stuff in order to, fit in with the Federation kind of standard of hierarchy. But you kind
Klingons.
of, right. But you embody
by humans.
Martok to me embodies everything I envision to be when it comes to a Klingon, like a true-blooded, old school Klingon. And I think you really showed that in this episode very well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Cirroc. I'm humbled, but I need you to go to every newspaper and magazine that's ever writing a story about you or anybody and make it a story about me.
I will do that.
I really appreciate that if you could do that.
That's a lot of newspapers that talk about Cirroc, though. That's going to be a lot of work.
I know. I know.
No, you stand alone, and I really love the range in this particular episode. I think you mentioned Ron Moore. Ron Moore really dealt with a lot of the subtle nuances in the language and also the arc of your character in this episode, going from somebody who doesn't really respect or appreciate the legacy of this Klingon to really admiring and respecting him and kind of toasting one to his greatness. I think that was one of the best arcs in an episode, and it
was a great arc.
I enjoyed it.
Fought that arc. Let me see. It's after the wedding. I'm gonna read you one of the things that, if I can find it. But I think there were no non-Klingon characters in that episode. Were there?
In that storyline, there was a B plot that Jake Sisko dominated that B plot, of course.
Yeah,
but,
right.
But predominantly, it was just that Klingon plot line, and it was all Klingons throughout that entire thing. There were no, we need a human perspective on this or anything like that, which they usually need. In this case, they said, no, these Klingons can carry this, all of them.
I'm finding pictures instead of, this is wonderful, of Far Beyond the Stars. Incredibly great episode, of Avery. And in fact, I won't look for it. It's boring to look for stuff.
Well, I could read you an excerpt from the companion that you may have been looking for.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, this was sent in by our associate producer, Eve England. And she says, I'm not going to try to do her accent because I wouldn't do it justice, although I really want to. She says, the companion states that in this episode, they made it clear that Martok was a commoner who worked his way up to leadership, whereas Kor was aristocratic and given privileges throughout his military career. This gave the episode natural tension. JG mentions in the companion that he took a lot from his own background in his portrayal of Martok and how this storyline really worked well with how he'd previously played it. In essence, the companion explains how JG's dad was a mechanic in the Air Force, but rose to become a colonel, and his home life was very work-oriented, mirroring how JG saw Martok's own life. I thought this was interesting. JG also mentions in the companion that he loved this episode because he could be far more venomous and angrier than we usually see him.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
I refuse. That is perfect because that's exactly what was going on. And, she got the very crux, the very heart of what was driving me in that episode. And my father was very important. I didn't think about that before. My dad, he enlisted as an enlisted man in 1940 and didn't have a college education, barely finished high school. He actually, my mother, on the other hand, had a master's degree not long after they got married. But no, she had it before they got married. Had a master's degree. He didn't have a college education, and she ended up becoming. She was the head of USAFE, United States Air Force Education System. It's called the USAFE, but we lived in Morocco. And my mother was the head of the organization in Morocco, in North Africa.
Where in Morocco were you?
Outside of Casablanca. And
that's where my mom grew up around the same time.
Is that right?
Yeah, Casablanca. It was from 48 to 65, I'd say.
You talking about Air Force or Army or something like that?
Her father was in the French military. Yeah.
Oh, the French! Oh,
Oh yeah.
The French. When I was there, my mother ended up teaching my father to help him earn his baccalaureate from the University of Maryland, which is the university that covers all the USAFI education. At least it did back in the day. They still you see advertising on television for University of Maryland around the world. I don't know why it is U of M, but anyway, about this episode, it was very important to me because in the writing, Ron Moore had written the line. Unfortunately, my father. No, I wrote this line. I wanted to add a line at the end of a long speech, and I called up Ron. I said, "Can I add this line?" And the line was, it pertained to exactly what you were talking about. Kor denied my father, Erthog, Martok's father, the only dream he had for his son was to allow his son, was to get his son to be able to accept it into the officers candidate program for the Klingon Defense Force.
Yeah.
And because I was not of noble birth, they wouldn't let me in because of Kor.
Yeah.
Kor is the one who kept saying no.
Yes.
So I added one line, and I called, Cirroc, you can't, in that show, people always talk about Next Generation and whatnot being a hoot. Everything was, people were goofing and it was fun.
Yeah.
Our show was serious, and you couldn't change a witch for a that or a that for a witch without getting approval.
Yes.
Anyway, so I called Ron from that little phone in the studio, which felt very Hollywood. Hello, Ron. JG. I want to add a line, and my line that I wanted to add was, unfortunately, because I did Martok did many courageous acts that got him a field promotion to
commission, yeah.
And I said, Ron, I'd like to add a line that says, unfortunately, my father did not live to see that day.
Yes, that was brilliant. That you added that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said, JG, of course, because it brought it all, that speech brought it the whole circle. It was completed at that thing. And that's what he was writing about. And he said, fine, that's great. And in my case, the reason it meant a lot to me was that my father didn't live to see any of my work in theater, film, or TV. He just, when we were talking in high school, he said, well, I know some people at Northrop Grumman, if you want to interested in, aerospace, or I said, no, Dad, I want to be an actor. He said, there's a bunch of kooks in that business, John. I said, yeah, I'm one of them, Dad. What can I say? God, it brings a tear to my face right now. But that's why it meant so much to me, because it was borrowed. That line was borrowed from my world as John, and it also fits so beautifully. And
so your father never got to see you
do anything.
Perform?
He died before I got really.
Yeah.
See, 73. I worked at the Folger in little tiny roles, Shakespeare, in 73 and 4. But he died in 76, and he was 100% disabled and really in bed before that. So, anyway, what was I going to say? Something about. I said, no, I don't want to forgive Kor. Core did this to me and my family and my father. I won't forgive him. But this is when everybody sings the song. I said, not me. I'm not going to be singing that song to Core, the Warriors anthem. And they said, well, okay, but we want people. They literally said, we want people to like Martok. Said too late.
You mentioned Shakespeare, and as I was watching this episode, Shakespeare kind of pops out to you, especially during those scenes when you give your monologue about your father and about being denied on this, officer request, and also Core's speech about when you said, you're making fun of him, and you're like, hey, why don't we go to Caleb 4 and check out what's going on?
So funny.
And you're really ragging him, and he just stays silent.
Right.
And he starts to walk out of the door.
Right.
And there's a last moment where you're like, hey, you got anything to say? And he says, yes, I hope that your life, the youth, you enjoy the fruits of your life and all this stuff. It was like, it sounded like Shakespeare to me. Ryan, I didn't the line down, but it sounded like Shakespeare to me.
It was a great line. I can't remember it either. People don't know this. It's like people don't know. We do because we work with him, but generally the general public doesn't really know who René Auberjonois was. He is recognized as the best commedia, stylized actor in theater history in America. He was the best. Physical comedy that was unbelievable. And on top of it, he could do everything else. But he was recognized in the theater world as the greatest commedia dell'arte actor that we have.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And what was I going to say? Something about, also, he was a wonderful artist. We both went to American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, but at different times. He was there before me. And Armin Shimmerman was there too. And I think the same time René was there. But René did woodcuts of a lot of Shakespeare's actors, maybe all the major characters. Woodcuttings that were about that big.
Wow, really? Yeah.
And I walked into the office one day and I saw these on the wall and I said, oh, those are beautiful. Where did you get those? To the administrative secretary. And she said, oh, René Auberjonois did them. I said, really? Not only a brilliant commedia dell'arte, a brilliant television actor, a butler of the most extreme means, wonderful, with Danny Davis, and anyway, Danny Davis was another Shakespearean actor from ACT. But I said, is there any way to I never talked to René about them. God, I should have. I really would have liked to have had some of those, or at least one of those.
Wow.
Maybe
Judith still has them. Maybe his wife might still have some. Hey, we do have to jump to our break very quickly. I do want to point out, I don't have it exact, but I did write down Core's line. He says, savor the fruit of life, my young friends. It has a sweet taste from the vine, but don't live too long. The taste turns bitter after time. And woo, doesn't that get you?
I don't know where it's from, but John Colicos played Petruchio in Taming True, opposite Katharine Hepburn on Broadway.
Wow.
That's who John Colicos is.
Well, let's definitely talk about Mr. Colicos because he was amazing in this, and we do have questions about him, and I'm sure you could tell us stories. We're going to take a Super quick break, everybody. We will be right back on the seventh rule.